mic that it is working and that you can be able to hear me. Yeah, today I want to share something that many people have never shared with a lot of people. And many of the people, they just see me and they don't really know where does the bush engineer come from. How did it start? How did Ted become a bush engineer? Yeah, in fact, started in 1968 when I was born. A small little kid born from the family of Mr. Gwerepeta, Mr. Sidney Gwerepeta, and Mrs. Anne Gwerepeta. And I was the firstborn. We are 5 of us in our family. There is myself, there is Ken, my brother, Meth, my sister, my sister, and Faith, my sister. Yeah, so as I was growing up as a young kid, my father was looking up to me very much for me being the elder son in the family. He always wanted me to grow up into a very successful person, somebody who can be able to lead the family. The unfortunate thing about it was that I was not smart at school. I don't know how it started, that I wasn't that much smart at school, but my biggest problem was the memory. Even up to now, I still struggle with problems of memory. I tend to forget people's names. I can't remember most of the names of the people that I went to school with. I only remember the ones that I was very much close with. Those are the ones that I remember. So I'm not good at memorizing phone numbers. Right now I can't even memorize my wife's phone number. My number itself, it took time for me to be able to memorize. And it's even getting worse now because there's too many things that goes in my head, like planning for my business, and I have to do a lot of research, I have to read, I have to memorize, study things. So it's very difficult for me to memorize. So I have a problem with memory. So sometimes people come here, they do a business with me, they come 2 weeks later, then they find that I'm blank. I'm not even remembering what we discussed about 2 weeks before. So yeah, this memory problem started when I was very, very young. So as you know, with our education in Malawi, it's all about memory. So if you have got a poor memory, you don't have a space in the education of Malawi. You have to have good memory to memorize things, because most of the stuff that school is about memorizing. So I struggled a lot in my primary school, failing a lot in class, and always being at the top, the bottom of the chain in class. And in those days when we were young, our teachers would arrange us based on the smartest to the lowest, the ones who were not smarter. The smartest were always put on the rows that were further from the teacher, and then the ones who were not smart enough, you ended up being just in front of the teacher's desk. So I was always in front of the teacher's desk. I was many times in my primary school one of the people that was always left in class, because if our teacher gave us assignments, we only left the class when you have got it right. So most of the times, I was always one of the last people to leave the class. For those who were in primary school with me, you can remember this. In my class, I had so many smart guys that I used to play with, and these guys were very smart. Most of them, they are overseas at the moment. They are living overseas. Right, so this went on like this, and in my home, my family used to laugh that we eat supper, like dinner together. So most of the times we'll sit on a table, and then we'll sit around the table. And this period of time was when the youngest sister was not yet born. So we would sit on the table, and then we'll have dinner together. Now, after dinner is when sometimes we would reflect what happened during the day. And this was during the time that you will find that any conversation that we would talk about would end up talking about the future. So my father would talk about how our future is going to be. More especially, he always looked at me and say, "You are struggling in school. I'm worried about you because in your future you're going to suffer because you are not that much smart in school. My sister was very, very bright. She was very smart in our class. She's the only one that went to university. As you know, in Malawi, for you at that time, to go to university, you had to be selected to go to university. So there weren't a lot of universities at that time. So if you were not smart enough, you would not be selected. So there weren't also private colleges like we have today. So my father was very worried about me, and it worried me a lot because I always visited my future many times. So every time we had dinner, it will give me a time to reflect about my future, because the subject of our future will always be talked about. So every time when I used to be, in my room alone, I was always thinking, I said, but why me? Why is it that I don't have this good memory? I can't memorize things. So I would try to find ways of being able to memorize, but I couldn't. But one thing that I used to like to do was to read. Even though I was not good at memorizing, but I was very good at reading. So I used to read comics, I used to read novels, so I read a lot of Kid Coat comics. There was a comic of a cowboy called Kid Coat. I read a lot of those comics. I used to read novels. I used to read James Hadley Chase. I read a lot of James Hadley Chase novels. And also at a very young age, we used to read a lot of those young books for young people, kids, and Enid Blyton, books like that, So the Hardy Boys, I read a lot of Hardy Boys. That's why my daughter was also buying her Hardy Boys. I read a lot of Tintins. I read a lot of Asterix. So I think this was something that was helping to develop my brain at a younger age, although I was not good at memorizing, but then I was actually like exercising my brain because I was reading a lot. And there was a time in school, I had a friend, she was my classmate, so she was living from Ndilande, and then she moved to Chiromoni. That time, I was living in Namiwawa, so she moved to Chiromoni. And then every now and then I used to go and chat with her. So she was very, very intelligent in class also. So every time when I finish, we knock off from class, I come home, I will go to her to visit her, and then I'll find her reading books and other stuff, and we were studying. But then we will start chatting. And she used to like to listen to music, and the music that she used to love was reggae. Her brother was a martial artist. So I know if she's watching, she knows who I'm talking about. In this story, this book, audio book of mine, I'll try to not mention many of the people's names to protect their privacy. I don't want to just be mentioned because I don't know whether people will be happy to be mentioned in my audio book. So I will just refer them to she or he. If I give a name, I will just twist the name and not give you the actual name. The ones that I'm going to give you the actual names are people that I am so sure that if I mention their names, they're not going to complain. So this particular girl, at that time we were a boy and girl, she had moved to stay with her sister who was married to another gentleman living in Chiromoni. So I used to visit her. And her brother was doing martial arts. So she told me, she said, Ted, you know that I can do martial arts. I said, oh, you can do martial arts. So how does it? So she started showing me the martial arts, like how to punch and how to block and other stuff. So I like this a lot. So every day when I go there, she will be showing me, we do some stretching, we do some push-ups and other stuff. And we listen to reggae music, and then, So one day her brother came and he found me there. And then she told him, she said, I do karate with Ted sometimes when you're free. And then the brother said, okay, Ted, let me show you how to do karate. And this guy, he was very tough with me. So that was the time that I was introduced to karate. So if you know, when I was young, a lot of people used to call me Bruce Lee, was because of this lady who introduced me to her brother who was doing martial arts. And eventually, I came to meet people like Moses Nyirenda. He passed away, may he so rest in peace. Started doing martial arts with Moses Nyirenda, and then I met Marumbo Nyirenda, may he so rest in peace, and he started teaching me martial arts. So from Moses, I learned I think I learned it was Shotokan, and then from Marumba I was learning Jujutsu. So we did some Jujutsu with Marumba, and we did some Shotokan with Moses. And then after doing this, so when I went home, I would do a lot of exercising, and then, because I was struggling in studying in school, but I had to find something to do. So I started doing this. So the martial arts was very good for me to start at a very young age, because it instilled some discipline in me. Because I ended up mixing with guys who were much older than me, because then Moses Nyirenda introduced me to Chaka Tore, who was also a martial artist at that time. So I used to go to his place in Nyambadwe to go and learn, and these guys, they instilled some discipline in me. So in primary school, I didn't get selected to go to secondary school. So my father organized for me to go to a secondary school, a private secondary school called the one that was in Blantyre, there at Laji Kuji. That's where I went, Blantyre Commercial Secondary School. So I went to this secondary school and started studying there. And then eventually, I can't remember if it was before I went to Blantyre Commercial, but I ended up being at Nyambadwe Secondary School also. So at Nyambadwe Secondary School, that's when I started with, like Moses was also the same school with Moses Nyirenda, so we started at Nyambadwe Secondary School. Then I wrote my Form 4 examination and failed. So my father was very, very worried about me, saying, and during the period of time when I was at Blantyre Commercial Secondary School, I remember, because you must remember, this was the time when I was just doing martial arts. So I would do at home some, push-ups and punches and stuff. Then at Blantyre Commercial, I met this guy. His name was called Albert Piri. This guy was so big and full of muscles. So we started chatting, and then he told me, I gym. I asked him, where do you do your gym? He said, no, I do a gym at there's a place called Strength and Fitness. It was somewhere there at the building that fell down in Blantyre, just opposite Cream Center, where the Reserve Bank is. So I said, I would like also to try this gymming. So he took me to that gym. I started gymming there. And then that's when I started also doing bodybuilding. So I could see when I was doing my bodybuilding that my body was showing muscles, and I was changing. And now from people calling me Bruce Lee, they started calling me Schwarzenegger. And I liked this so much. So I used to do lift weights and all those kind of things. And my father, he was very worried, very much worried, because he thought that now, because I'm concentrating on this martial arts and bodybuilding, these things are going to not make me do well in school. So he used to shout at me, but I continued. I couldn't leave this, because I was able to do something that I do, and I could see some changes. So if I do like my bodybuilding, I would see some changes in my body. I remember the turnaround for my bodybuilding was when we had some family friends, and these family friends were also living in Namiwawa. They just came from America. And then we used to go and chat with them, the brothers and the sisters, but mainly we were chatting with the sisters. And then one of the sisters one day started laughing at me, because I was building, but my muscles were, like very tiny. So it was very funny how my muscles were looking on my arms. So she laughed at me and said, Teddy, you are puny. So I said to her, what do you mean when you say I'm a puny? She says, you go figure it out, but you are a puny. So I went home and looked in the dictionary. It said, a puny is a poor and undersized man. So this made me very, very upset. I said, with all what I'm doing, trying to build my muscles, and this girl is calling me a puny, a poor and undersized man. And then she had a book that she had in the house, and this book was called, it was written by Frank Zen. Frank Zen was a bodybuilder, and the title of the book was called The Zen Way to a Beautiful Body. So I begged her, I said, can you borrow me this book? So she borrowed me the book. So I took it to my house, and I started studying this book, and the book had everything about diet, for bodybuilding, and also routines for bodybuilding. So I started, studying those routines, and then started using those routines strictly. Then when I started using those routines, I started seeing that I was having changes in my body, and my body was starting to become more muscular. And in that book, there was also another way of bodybuilding without using weights. All you did was just imitate the movements of the weightlifting, but you do it very, very slow with tension. And I used to do that. I could see my body started coming up, and I was getting this beautiful shape. I remember when I started going to visit them, they could see now that, oh, Ted is now. She laughed. She said, oh, Ted, you don't want to be a puny anymore. I said, no, I don't want to be called a puny anymore. I want to be called a I want to have muscles. So after I wrote my Form 4 and failed at Blanta Commercial, my father organized for me to go to Chichiri Secondary School. So at Chichiri Secondary School, my father went to tell the principal there and told them that, you know what, I would like you to put my son in one of the best classes where you have the best students. So they put me in the class where there was the best students. I remember there was the guys there, Ephraim Piri and his friends in that class. May his soul rest in peace. All those guys passed away. And these guys used to mock me in class. I remember Ephraim Piri one day standing in front of the class and mocking me, sitting at the back. I was sitting at the back seat in the class. But I was whenever we used to write tests, I was always failing. You know, I just came from a private secondary school. I was not even selected to go to this secondary school. My father organized me to go to this secondary school. Then every test that the teacher would give us, I would fail. So, and the way the teacher was doing was, when we write an assignment, every week we used to write an assignment. So when we write an assignment, the teacher will be calling the name. So everybody must go and take his book or notebook or paper that he wrote the test. You must go to the teacher and get it. So he will start from like the highest, number 1. You say number 1, FM Piri. He got 99 out of 100. So he must walk and get it. And then he said, Ted, 5 out of 100. And everybody in the class will go, You know, it was very, very, very bad for me at Chichiri Secondary School. So, so Ephraim, one day he stood in front and he said, you know, Ted, you know, one day, I don't know what this bodybuilding is going to do to your life, because one day, when we grow up, I'll be driving this big car and passing you, and you'll be walking in the street with your big muscles. So I looked at him and I said, you know, Ephraim, you don't know what God has planned for each one of us. So you might be that intelligent and be smart like that, but you don't know what God has put in for me for the future. And everybody in class was laughing, and they were laughing at me. So I went home and I said to myself, you know, my father has organized for me to go to this secondary school. So he's wanting what's best for me. So it will be very bad for me if I come to write exams and I fail. And my father is not going to be very happy. So what must I do? So there was one day I was sitting in class. What I used to do, I used to bring a container from school. So I used to sit with these 3 ladies. And I'm sure if one of them is watching, she will remember that we were friends in Chichiri Secondary School. So I would sit with them and always chat. I've got a few pictures that I took with them. I've got them still. I have them in my album. I will eat lunch in the class. So I didn't like to mingle with anybody at Chichiri Secondary School because of the way the guys were treating me there. So while I was sitting, and these guys, they would come in front on the blackboard, and then they would be solving mathematical problems. So they would stand there, and then they would start saying, okay, today we're going to do geometry. So they would look at the past papers, and then they would be busy working on the geometry. So I would just sit in the class and then watch them as they were busy discussing. I realized that when they discuss the geometry, I was able to understand better than when the teacher was standing in front to discuss. So I don't know what was happening, but when they were busy talking and discussing geometry and talking about the obtuse angle, whatever, isosceles triangles and stuff, this thing was coming into my head much, much easier. Then I said, wow, it looks like I'm starting to understand this geometry. What more must I do? So what I did was I went and found myself a book. It's called CV Jurero. It was a mathematical book, so it used to have algebra in there, arithmetic in there, and geometry. So I got the CV Jurero, and then I started studying this CV Jurero at school. I discovered that I was very much. I'm going to take this thing. It was very much easier for me to understand geometry and a little bit of algebra. And then arithmetic was very, very difficult for me. So I said, okay, when I looked at the subjects that I had, and for me to pass my Form 4, it meant that for me to get, I think you needed to have 6 subjects. I can't remember how many subjects we were supposed to have there. But with the subjects that I had, Chichiri was also offering physical science. I couldn't take physical science because from the secondary school that I came from, the private secondary school, they didn't offer physical science. So I had to put physical science off, and I had to bring in agriculture, which I never studied at when I was at Blantyre Commercial. So I knew mathematics was supposed to be part of my subject that I must pass, because if I don't pass mathematics, I can work hard and pass at least agriculture, but mathematics was very difficult. So I started working so hard on the mathematics. And when I discovered that I could understand geometry, maybe that's why I'm very good with, I'm creative, I come up with ideas for the business that I'm doing. It's because of the geometry. Geometry is also a creative subject. It's not more of calculations, but it's all about creativity, you know. So I was very good with geometry and a little bit of algebra. And for you to pass your Form 4 certificate that time, you needed to have 33% on your results. So I knew that if I get, say, for example, 80% geometry, and I get maybe about 60% geometry, and I get maybe arithmetic, I get 30, and I add them together, the average could be over 33%. So all I needed was for me to get that 33%. So I remember when we wrote our mock exams, the teacher was calling the names, and then he called my name, and he said, Ted Kwerebeta, he was giving out geometry. Ted Kwerebeta, 80%. And the whole class was shocked, and they were like looking at me. How could Ted, the guy who was always failing, get 80%? And there was a couple of subjects that I also did very well with the mock exams, because what I did at home was to tell my mom, I told my mom, I said, you know, I want to move out of the house, and I want to go into the servants' quarters. Our house, we used to have a boys' quarter in Namiwawa there. So I said, I want to stay in the boys' servants' quarters. So she asked me why. I said, no, I want to have time to study. So I would spend a lot of time in the boys' quarters studying. When I come from school, I didn't go anywhere during the examination period. I was heavily studying because I knew that I needed to pass my Form 4. And because I didn't have enough time for study, what I did was, when we wrote the mock exams, I looked at the subjects that I did well. And then I took all the subjects that I did well, I took the books, I chucked them away. And then I concentrated on the subjects which I was struggling, which was Bible knowledge, arithmetic, agriculture, and I can't remember what other subject was. So I was concentrating on these subjects. I said, but I need to just get over 33%. In the meantime, my father, he called me and told me, he said, you know, my son, I really want you to pass this examination. I don't want you to fail again. But if you pass, I promise you that I'm going to buy a ticket for you to go to South Africa. You're going to go to South Africa for a visit. So it was like a motivation for me. So I worked so hard and wrote the exams. And I remember when the time for the results came, we had some friends that we were living with in Namiwawa there. We were playing, and this friend of ours, the parents had some connection with some people in the government or at the education or something. So they already had their results for the examinations, for 4th examination. And then when I came, the guy said to me, Ted, congratulations, you passed. I was very angry with him. I said, who told you that I've passed? He said, no, Ted, you have passed. I said, I don't want to believe. Please don't talk to me about that. He said, I'm telling you you've passed. I said, I don't want to listen. And I was very angry, and I left. I went home. And the next day, they started announcing the names on radio of the people who have passed. And then my name was mentioned. You know, I was so happy. I was so excited that I had passed my Form 4. And that evening when I went home, I was at home in my room, I said to myself, I can achieve anything, because I could not believe that I could pass my Form 4. Because if I had passed my Form 4, it meant that I also had passed my mathematics, which was the subject that I dreaded the most. So I said to myself, there's nothing in life that can stop me from achieving what I want. And I was also doing a lot of my gym and bodybuilding and getting even more and more muscular, because now I'm like motivated. Then the time came when my father had to buy the ticket for me to go to South Africa. So he organized a passport for me and then bought a ticket for me. And then I flew to South Africa. Then in South Africa, I was staying with a family that was, the parents were working at the embassy. The father was working at the Malawi embassy. So I stayed with the family there. And one of their sons, he took me to town to visit, to see how Johannesburg looked like, to also do some shopping. And he took me to one of my friends. I'm sure I can mention his name. That was the first time I saw Widobe in South Africa, and then we went to visit him. And it was nice. And when I went to visit Widobe, he was living in a flat, and he had a job that he was doing. I said to myself, wow, I would like to come to this country and live in this country, you know? So I got motivated that I want to go and live in South Africa. So I remember when we went to Johannesburg, the city, to go and do shopping, I was looking at the city, and I discovered that Johannesburg was planned in a way that the streets were just like straight. You see a street going this way straight and another one going this way, and there will be like all of them going parallel to each other, and this way also parallel to each other. So I was looking at these streets and just memorizing the streets. I remember memorizing Loveday Street, Risic Street, Commissioner Street, Vomarand Street. So I was just memorizing. So, and then we did the shopping, and while we were doing in the shopping in town, me and my friend, we were attacked. I was actually the one who was attacked, because I was buying some groceries. I think we were in Market Street, and I was carrying my bags. My friend told me, you must be careful with your stuff, please hold them properly. So I was holding my bag like this, and we're walking in Market Street. And there were some young guys walking this way while we were going that side. And one of them bumped me and dropped the camera. And then I looked back, and then when he dropped the camera, I looked back and I said, sorry. He said, no problem. And he picked up his camera and he started going. Then suddenly he came back and he said, hey, my friend, you broke my camera. I said, but I didn't mean to break it. He said, but what are we going to do? This is my boss's camera. You need to replace my camera. You are going to pay me for this camera. So I said, I don't have money. And then these guys, one of them just bumped me. I think he hit me with his arm on my head here, and I fell down. And I picked my bag and I ran into a shop, an Indian shop. And then these guys followed me and they said, no, my friend, don't worry. Come out, it's okay now. You can come out. I said, no, I'm not coming out. So I just sat in the shop, and then they walked away. And then this son of this man we were staying with, he stood in front of me to protect me and started shouting with these guys. And then those guys left. So that was an encounter that I had there. After they had gone, I found my jacket had been torn already. I had a jacket that had pockets on the side, and my air ticket was in that jacket. They had torn my jacket, but lucky enough, my air ticket and my passport wasn't removed. It was still in there. So that was the first encounter that I had in Johannesburg with the Scotties. So I came back to Malawi, and it was always in my head thinking I would like to go back to South Africa, but I don't know how to do this thing. How will I be able to go back to South Africa? And if I go there, where will I stay? And who am I going to be? Who's going to take care of me? Or where am I going to live? So every night I would think about it. I started buying Bona magazines. I would look at magazines of Bona to see the stuff. I saw the women there in Bona. I always dreamed when I go to South Africa, I'm going to get married there and all this kind. So me marrying a South African woman was actually planned when I was even young, before I went to South Africa. So uh, then life started going on. One day my father, he told me, tomorrow you're going to start a new job. I've got a job for you. So he took me in his car and he took me to AMI. That was around, Makata area. So we arrived there, and then my father got out of the car and he said, follow me. And then I followed him to the office, and he took me to a certain gentleman there at AMI. And then my father left, and the gentleman said, oh, Ted, okay, come with me. He took me to the warehouses, and there was a gentleman there. His name was Gondwe. So he said, Gondwe, this guy is going to be working with you. And I started working as a clerk at AMI. So Gondwe took me to one of the offices there, and he told me, Ted, here we do personal effects. So we were on the department where we were packing personal effects for expatriates who were leaving the country. So we would be going to their house and they pack their stuff and then put it in boxes and then put it in a container for groupage. So that was my job as a clerk. I was now almost like supervising the group of people that were busy packing these things. It was so boring for me because I was sitting in the office almost every day, and I was so tired and bored. Now, what I did now, I opened an account with a bank and started to save my money. Lucky enough, when the month end came, my father and my mother, they never asked money from me. So they just looked at me and never said anything. So I just started pumping my money in the bank. The extra money, I was buying equipment stuff for me to do the gym. I also started buying weights, equipment. I even started a gym in Dirande. I opened a gym there, and there was a time when the newspaper, Malawi News, came and featured me in the newspaper. Young boys' dream to open a gym came true and all that stuff. They featured my gym. I had this gym that I was renting there. So when I knock off from work, I would go to my gym to check and see how my gym is doing, then I'll go home. So yeah, but the rest of the money I was keeping. So this was already in my head, planning that one day when things go right, I'm going to leave Malawi, I'm going to go to South Africa. So one day, there was a gentleman with his family. He came with a minibus, and he was buying curios, ziboli. And he was a white guy from South Africa. So he was buying ziboli, and then William Gondwe told me and said, Ted, I want you to help this gentleman with his packing of his ziboli in a container. We wanted to send them to South Africa for him. So he came with his wife, and he had 2 kids. I think it was 2 daughters, but they were very young kids. So me, I was working with them, helping them. So on a particular Saturday morning, they wanted to, they couldn't finish with their packing, and then they decided that, okay, now, because at that time our company was working, we were working half day on a Saturday. So it was just after lunch, and this man discovered we can't finish doing the work that we're doing. We must meet again on Monday. So he had nothing to do over the weekend. He decided he wanted to go to the lake with his wife and his kids. So he called me and he said, Ted, I know that the banks have closed, but now we don't have money. So we were thinking, don't you know somebody who can borrow us money? So I asked him, what money, what do you want the money for? They said, no, we want to go to the lake, but we don't have money, the banks are closed. So I said, how much money are you looking for? So they told me, I can't remember how much money it was, but they told me the money they wanted. I said, I have the money, I can borrow you if you want to. So he said, oh, you have the money? I said, yes. Where is the money? I said, it's at home. So what I was doing was, I was saving money in my bank account, but at the same time, I was also saving some other money at home. So I cut my mattress, I just stole it, and then I was chucking some of the notes inside the mattress. So I told him, I said, no, I've got the money at home. So he said, can we go? I said, no problem. So when we knocked off from work, him and they took me in his car, his wife and the 2 kids in the combi, we went to our house. That time we were staying in Chiromoni, at the Vasilatos' house. We were renting at Vasilatos' house. My parents were renting the house there. So we went all the way to Sigereke, to where we were staying. So we arrived there, and then we saw our house. We were living in this house was an upstairs double-story house. Now, me and my brother, we had our room at the bottom of the house. So we went into the house. He said, "Oh, Ted, you come from a beautiful house." I said, "Yeah, this is my parents' house and everything." So I took them to my room, and then I took the money, I gave it to him. So he said, "Oh, Ted, thank you very much. You know, Monday I'll give you back your money." I said, "No problem, you'll give me back the money." So they left. So the next Monday, he came, we called Gondwe. He said, "Gondwe, this is a good man. You know, we didn't have money over the weekend, and he borrowed us some money. So he gave me back my money." So he gave me his business card. He said, "You know, Ted, anytime you come to South Africa, you can always call me. You can come to me, no problem." I said, "Thank you very much." And I kept this business card in my pocket. I said, "My friend, you don't know who you're talking to." So he left. So I started planning now. I know where I can go and stay. And the time that he came with a guy, because this man was buying ornaments. In South Africa, he had a shop where he was selling curios. Now, he used to buy a lot of curios. So when he arrives in South Africa, sometimes the curios, they get damaged. So he wanted them to be repaired. So he took a guy from PTC, the bodybuilding there at PTC, his name was Charles, to take him to South Africa so that he can be repairing these curios for him. So they went with him in their combi, they took him to South Africa. But me, I didn't know Charles at this particular time. So while I was working, Gondwe came to me and said, "No, Ted, there is a company called SGS. So if you know about SGS, or if you are working for SGS, I see in Kanengo there is a company called SGS. We were the first people to work with SGS. SGS started under AMI. And the idea of SGS was that because at the time there was war in Mozambique, SGS was to be inspecting the food for the refugees. So they came and then they asked AMI to run this department. So this department was run by us and headed by, I don't know if it was still William who was heading, but yeah, so we had to work for the SGS. So I was moved for AMI head of in Makata to go to Chichiri at Manika warehouses. So I used to work at Manika warehouses. Sometimes we would be called to Limbe Admark to go and check the food that was being supplied there for the refugees. Sometimes we would do at Manika. And then there was a time when I was moved to do some inspection in Admark Limbe. Now, at Limbe Admark, there were some women who were working there in the office. So they used to love me so much. So call me, Ted, did you have lunch? I said, "No, come and eat lunch with us." So I would eat lunch with them and whatever. So I started telling them, I said, "You know me, I don't like doing this kind of job." They said, "Why don't you like it?" I said, "No, me, I would like to go to South Africa." They said, "You would like to go to South Africa?" I said, "Yes, but I don't know how to go there." So they said, one of the ladies said, "No, my husband is a truck driver. If you are really willing, he can take you to South Africa." I said, "No, me, I'm willing." She said, "No, when my husband comes back from South Africa, I'm going to let you talk to him." So when the husband came back, the woman took me to her husband, and then I started discussing with him, and the man said, "No, when you are ready, you can always tell me, I'll take you to South Africa. What do you want to do in South Africa?" I said, "No, I'm going to look for greener pastures." He said, "But you are still young." I said, "Yeah, but I can't stay in Malawi." Because at the time, when I passed my Form 4, I didn't pass very well. So I couldn't get selected to go to university. So my father was happy, but he was still now like, that's why he got me this job at AMI. So I felt like, no, I'm going to be doing this kind of credit jobs. And the money that I was earning, for me to be able to one day get a wife and have a house, I knew I would never live the same life that my father had provided me. I would never be able to live in a suburb area like Namiwawa with this kind of job. I have to get out of here. Because for me, I always said, maybe I was not destined to work in the office. I was destined to work and be a businessman like Mr. Makumula. You know, there used to be a friend of ours. Yeah, he introduced me to a man who used to have trucks. The trucks was called transgender gender. So we used to visit that man, and that man, he was very nice with us. But I said I used to admire him. He had so many trucks, and they had even a Land Cruiser with big tires that his brothers used to drive. And this man employed his brother, and his brother was the one who was doing admin. This man didn't know how to do any writing or admin and stuff like that. So I used to say, if this man can't even write, but me at least, I went to secondary school, why wouldn't I be like him? So I always wanted to be a businessman one day. So then I said to myself, no, for me to be a businessman, I must get out of Malawi, go to South Africa, because at that time there was a lot of people who were coming from South Africa working at Teba. So they were working in the mines in South Africa. So we will find a guy, doesn't even know how to write and nothing. He goes to South Africa, he comes to Malawi, he's building houses, he's got nice car and stuff like that. So I used to admire these guys. I said, no, me, I would like to go to that country. Maybe I can also come with cars and all those kind of things. Yeah. So this man said, okay, when you're ready, I'm going to take you. I said, okay, fine. So I went to the bank, National Bank. So National Bank has been my bank for a very long time. So I went to National Bank, and then I met the people that were to the Forex department. They asked me, what do you want? I said, no, I'm looking for traveler's checks. I said, we want traveler's checks. How much? So I filled the forms. They told me, come again after 3 days. I went after 3 days. I just see they're giving me checks like this. They said, no, sign here. And I signed the checks. You had the check, there was one side that you sign in front of the teller, the person who's providing you the checks, and then the other side that you will be signing when you're cashing. So I signed my checks. I can't remember how much money I had bought for travel checks, but it was a lot, enough money at the time, because you must imagine I had been saving this money for a year. So I'd been working for AMI for 1 year, but saving every month. So I bought these checks. Imagine I was also very young. I can't remember, maybe I was like 19 or maybe 20, but I was a guy who was already made a decision what I want to do with my life. So I got these checks, and in my passport, I went home, I took the checks, I hid them under my mattress. Then I went to this man and I told him, I said, you know what, me, I'm ready for going to South Africa. He said, you're ready? I said, yes. He said, okay, such a date, we are leaving, but we don't go through Mozambique because there's war, we'll go through Zambia. I said, no problem. So he said, okay, fine. So we'll meet at such a place, I'll pick you up, and then we'll go. I said, okay, fine. So I came home. I came home, I thought, so must I tell my parents? No, I can't tell them, because if I could have told my dad, he was going to make anything possible to confiscate my passport so that I don't leave. So I said, okay, fine, I'm not going to tell him. So I went to my work, I applied for a leave. So they said, you want to go for holiday? I said, yeah, because me, I've been working for 1 year, I want to leave. So I took leave, and okay, sorry, I think there was something wrong with the connection. All right, yeah. I took leave from work, and then I was granted my leave, and then I said to myself, I'm going to go out for leave. So that day that I was leaving, I woke up in the morning, the previous day before I left, that evening, I decided that no, I need to tell somebody. I can't just leave without telling somebody, because if something happens to me, nobody's going to know what happened and where I am. So I decided to tell my brother. So we were lying on our beds, and I said to my brother, Ken, you know what, you remember I've been telling you that me, I always want to go to South Africa. He said, yeah, you've been always talking about this. He says, no, I told him, I said, tomorrow I'm leaving. My brother couldn't believe. He said, are you going tomorrow? I said, yes. He said, you're joking, you're lying. I said, I'm telling you the truth. He said, you're lying. So I pulled out of my bed. I said, here are the traveler's checks. I've already done the traveler's checks. Tomorrow I'm leaving. So please do me a favor. Don't tell the parents that I'm leaving. He said, no, I won't tell them. So the next morning I woke up. So every day when I used to go to work, my father would give me a lift. So I would go in the car with me, my father, and my mom. My mom was working in Limbi. My father was working in Blanta, Darame, I think. I don't know. No, he was working at TVET at that time, if I'm not mistaken. So they took me in the morning. I'm going to work, dropped me in town for me to get a bus to go to Manica. So they dropped me in town. Oh, okay, see you tonight. I'll see you. That day, I remember up to now, I was carrying a small bag. It was a maroon bag that has yellow circles on the side. I was carrying that bag. And I don't know why they didn't ask me, why are you carrying the bag? It was a small bag. I just took a few clothes of mine and stuff. And then I started going. And then they dropped me to get into a bus, just to make sure they're gone. And then I took the other way to go and get into the truck. So I got into the truck, sitting in the truck. So we started driving all the way from Branta to Lilongwe. So we came to Lilongwe, past Lilongwe, we went to Nchinji border. So that night, we were crossing the border the next morning. So I knew now, at home, my parents must have seen that the son is not coming. So they must be thinking, what's going on? And I was praying that my brother is not going to tell them that, no, he's leaving, he's going to South Africa. Because I knew if he tells them, my father could easily phone the immigration at the border in Nchinji or Mwanza and tell them that there's a young man by the name of Ted Guerrero. Please stop him, he mustn't go. So the next morning, I stood on the line, gave my passport, it was stamped. Crossed to the other side, Zambia, stamped. I just went, wow, now the journey has started. Now I don't know what's going to happen to me. The only thing that I know is that I've got a business card that belongs to that white man. That is the only thing that is going to say, give me the opportunity to live in South Africa. If I don't get that man, I better go and start looking for, maybe I will talk to my friend Wirobe to see if maybe he can allow me to stay with him, but this is it. So I left. So as I can see here, I can see that I've done almost 54 minutes, and I think this chapter, which is chapter 1, let's call it Running Away from Home. So tomorrow we are going to do chapter 2, which is going to start from Zambia, going all the way to South Africa. So for you to enjoy this series, please don't miss it. Come and watch all the series. If you are going to miss a series, please go back to the series and watch it so that you don't miss anything. More especially for the young people who want to make a decision in life, you can learn from my story, from the mistakes that I made, and also from things that I did that can be a positive, that can bring a positive impact in your life. But what I can say to you is that whatever you can dream of, whatever you think of, if it can be well conceived, you can achieve it. If you really believe it. Me, I started believing in myself when I was very, very young. And as you can see here, that I made and took this challenge on my own without anybody helping me. And I took this risk, and look what has happened to me today. I ended up having a wonderful family from South Africa, beautiful kids. I've got a company, I've built myself a house. Somebody who was always told that you will never make anything in life if you don't educate yourself. So the reason why I left Malawi is because I was not well educated. I knew that with my Form 4 certificate, the only job that I could have managed to get is either to be a clerk. And with things getting worse, maybe I was not even going to be able to advance myself to another level, like to come to management level or whatsoever. I don't know if I had not made this decision, what my life would have been like today. Maybe I wouldn't be alive today. Maybe I would have suffered a lot, or maybe I would be somewhere. But I don't think that a lot of people would have benefited from the knowledge that I've gained over my life, throughout the life that I've gone through. So there are so many people that have gotten advantage from the experiences that I've had in my life. Today I've got a wonderful family, I've got beautiful kids. If I had not made that decision, my kids wouldn't have been today here, and my wife wouldn't have lived in Malawi today. So yeah, for those who are watching this from YouTube, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Please tell me, leave a comment and tell me what you think about my life. Are you being inspired? And there's something that I also want to discuss with you, the guys that are watching from Facebook. I would like the next chapter that I do the live from YouTube. The reason is that with YouTube, I can earn some money. On Facebook, I don't earn anything. So I'll do this, you will watch and enjoy it, but I don't get paid nothing. But if I do this series on YouTube, there's also some people who are living outside Malawi, from America, Kenya, all over the world, that are also going to be inspired to watch this series. And by them watching, I will be able to earn some money. So I would like to tell you that when I do the next one, I'll try my best to do the live from YouTube, and I can share the link on my profile on Facebook, and then you can watch it through there. Or the other way of you to do it is to come to my YouTube channel, Block929, and then watch my live through my YouTube channel. It's the same. There's nothing that you lose. For you to move from Facebook to go to YouTube, you don't lose nothing. It costs you the same amount of money that data that you spend on Facebook is the same amount of data that you spend on YouTube. So it shouldn't be so difficult for you to just swap to go to YouTube and watch my live from there. And then at least you will benefit from enjoying my story. I'll also benefit from telling you the story and earn something. And I know that when I share it on YouTube, the video will be there for many years, and so many people will be inspired and will keep on watching the video, and then I'll be earning money as people keep on watching. So thank you very much. Tell me what you think about this story. Do you think the style of which I'm sharing with you, do you like it, or do you have some suggestions on how you think I should be presenting my story to you? But thank you very much for watching, and see you tomorrow.